Hey, welcome to the briefing. What I'm going to cover with you today is this. Before you blame the carrier, inspect the dock handoff. I want to take this one into logistics because this is one of those environments where the visible failure can show up at the very end of a much longer chain. The truck leaves late, the carrier asks for detention, the customer delivery window gets tight, transportation wants an answer, the dock wants to defend itself, customer service wants to know what to say. The report shows a late pickup and the first explanation starts forming fast. The carrier failed. Maybe the carrier did fail. That happens. Carriers miss appointments. Dispatchers miss updates. Drivers show up without the right trailer. Equipment is not always where it needs to be. Appointment discipline matters, and carrier accountability matters. Let me be clear on that. This is not a defense of weak carrier performance. But it is also not leadership to blame the carrier every time the pickup misses the window before you inspect the dock handoff that was supposed to turn the plan into movement. That is the part I care about in this briefing. The pickup does not fail only when the truck leaves late. The pickup may start failing when the appointment time does not match the dock board. It may start failing when the load is marked ready before the freight is truly staged, counted, labeled, released, and paperwork ready. It may start failing when the driver checks in on time, but no one owns the next update. It may start failing when the dock has no clean door plan, the guard shack does not capture the right detail, or the shipping clerk is waiting on paperwork that nobody else knows is holding the movement. From a distance, all of that can collapse into one line, late pickup. But that line may hide the real failure point. That is where close-up analysis matters. Close-up analysis is the discipline of getting close enough to inspect the exact part of the movement where the freight, appointment, driver, dock, paperwork, trailer, and system status stop matching each other. It is not a broad read. It is not warehouse needs to move faster. It is not transportation needs better carriers. It is not everyone needs to communicate. Those statements may have some truth in them, but they are too broad to fix the actual handoff. The sharper question is this: where exactly did the pickup stop moving with clarity? Think about that for a second. A transportation plan can look clean before the truck arrives. A warehouse plan can look clean before the freight reaches the door. A dock schedule can look clean before live conditions hit it. But the dock is where all of those plans get tested. The appointment becomes a truck. The load status becomes physical freight. The staging plan becomes floor space. The trailer plan becomes equipment. The paperwork becomes permission to move. The carrier communication becomes a real departure. That is why the dock handoff matters. It is where planning becomes physical execution. I have made versions of this mistake before in different environments, not because I did not care about the details, but because the late symptom was easier to see than the earlier mismatch. The visible miss always has gravity. It pulls your attention. A late truck is easy to argue about. A detention charge is easy to react to. A customer risk call is easy to escalate. But the earlier breakdown may be quieter. It may be sitting in a status field, a staging lane, a door assignment, a pallet count, a seal, a bill of lading, or an update nobody owned. That took experience to respect. A late departure may be the symptom. The dock handoff may be the driver. Picture a regional distribution center serving retail replenishment, wholesale customers, and direct-to-store shipments. We will call the outbound operations manager Ramon. Ramon's facility runs multiple outbound waves every day. Some loads are live loaded, some trailers are dropped, some pickups are scheduled through an appointment platform. Some are coordinated through email between transportation, carriers, and customer service. The building is busy. Freight volumes are uneven. Dock doors are tight during the afternoon. Transportation costs are high. Customers are pushing for tighter delivery windows. Carriers are watching wait time more closely. Over the last month, Ramon's operation has been getting more detention complaints. Some carriers say drivers are checking in on time and waiting too long. Dock leads say carriers are arriving before freight is ready. Transportation says the loads are marked ready in the system. Customer service says late departures are creating delivery risk calls. Ramon's team is tired of hearing about carriers. Transportation is tired of hearing about the dock. Everybody has a version of the story, and every version has just enough truth to keep the argument alive. That is a dangerous place for a leader because the argument can become the work. Transportation defends transportation. Warehouse defends warehouse. Carriers defend carriers. Customer service tries to explain the miss after the window is already at risk. Meanwhile, the actual handoff keeps producing the same failure. The newest issue is a priority retail replenishment load. The customer needs the shipment before a weekend sales window. The appointment is set for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The carrier confirms the pickup. The system shows the load is ready. The driver arrives at 1:50 in the afternoon. That sounds good. 10 minutes early. The appointment is protected. The plan should work. But the truck does not depart until 5:20. Now the carrier requests detention. The customer receives a late risk notice. Transportation blames the carrier for not managing the appointment. The dock blames transportation for scheduling too many pickups in the same window. The warehouse says the load was ready enough to start. Customer service just wants the truth because they need to update the customer. Ramon is looking at the whole thing, and the first fix seems obvious. Push the carrier, challenge the detention, tell transportation to schedule better, tell the dock to move faster, remind everyone to communicate. Each of those may be reasonable, but Ramon notices something important. This is not happening across every shipment. It is clustering around one point, afternoon outbound dock handoffs for customer-critical loads. That pattern matters. When the same delay keeps appearing at the same handoff, the leader should not stop at the carrier story. The leader needs to inspect the exact point where the movement loses clarity. So Ramon gets closer. He does not rely only on the late departure report. He watches the pickup sequence from appointment to departure. The appointment confirmation says 2 o'clock. The dock board shows a 2:30 load window. The guard shack has the carrier name, but not the trailer requirement. The driver checks in at 1:50. The load status in the system says ready. On the floor, the freight is staged in 2 lanes because one pallet is waiting on a corrected label. The dock lead knows the load is close, but not fully clear. The shipping clerk is waiting on the final pallet count before printing the bill of lading. Transportation believes the load is ready because the system status changed earlier. The driver waits in the yard. Nobody owns the next update. By the time the dock assigns a door, the driver has already been waiting long enough that the situation is moving toward detention. And now the issue is clearer. This was not only carrier timing, it was status mismatch. The appointment, dock board, guard shack, load readiness, staging, paperwork, and driver communication were not aligned. The load was not truly ready in the way transportation believed it was ready. The driver was not truly late in the way the dock story suggested. The dock handoff lost clarity before the truck ever backed in. That is the difference between a short read and a useful read. A short read sees a late truck. A useful read sees the point where the movement stopped matching the plan. And that is the leadership test. Are you reacting to the late pickup because it is visible, or are you inspecting the handoff detail that created it? Once Ramon gets close enough, the small details start to matter. The transportation appointment does not always match the dock board. The guard shack checks drivers in, but does not always capture trailer type, live load priority, or customer critical status. The warehouse marks loads ready when picking is complete, not when the freight is fully staged, wrapped, counted, labeled, quality released, and paperwork ready. Dock leads know which loads are physically ready, but transportation sees only the system status. Shipping clerks may know paperwork is the constraint, but nobody else sees that delay until the truck is already waiting. Drivers ask the guard shack for updates, but the guard shack does not own outbound status. Customer service sees late departure, but not the reason the handoff failed. That is how detention forms, not always from one dramatic failure, from small details that do not line up. Appointment time, check-in record, door assignment, load ready definition, staging lane, pallet count, paperwork, seal, driver update, departure scan. That is a stack. And when the stack finally shows itself, the carrier becomes the easiest target because the truck is the visible object that did not leave. But a visible object is not always the root cause. Now let's be fair to transportation. Transportation has a hard job here. They are managing carrier capacity, rates, appointments, customer commitments, transit timing, detention exposure, driver availability, and facility constraints that may change hour by hour. If the system says the load is ready, transportation has a reason to believe the appointment can move. If the carrier accepted the pickup, transportation has a reason to expect the truck to perform. If the customer window is tight, transportation has a reason to push for movement. Let's be fair to the warehouse too. The warehouse is not working inside a spreadsheet. It is moving physical freight. A load may be mostly ready, but one pallet label is wrong. One pallet count changed. Quality has not released one pallet. A staging lane is blocked. A forklift is down. A checker is tied up on another load. A door is occupied longer than expected. Another customer critical shipment is competing for the same dock space. The floor has real constraints. Let's be fair to the carrier and driver. A driver may check in on time and still wait because the facility is not ready. The driver may not know whether the delay is 10 minutes or 2 hours. The dispatcher may be asking for updates. The driver may have another appointment after this one. Wait time becomes money. Detention becomes a dispute. And if the site does not give clear updates, the carrier will build its own version of what happened. Let's be fair to customer service. They are often the ones who have to explain the failure downstream. They may not control the carrier, the dock, the freight, or the paperwork, but they own the conversation with the customer. If they receive the update late, they cannot protect trust early. They end up explaining the delay after the customer already feels the risk. That is why the dock handoff is not just a warehouse issue. It is a connection point between transportation, warehouse, carrier, driver, customer service, and customer trust. When leaders only inspect one side, the correction gets weak. If Ramon only blames the carrier, the distribution center may win one detention dispute. Maybe. But the next driver may still check in on time and wait. The next load may still be marked ready too early. The next dock lead may still lack a clean door plan. The next shipping clerk may still wait on paperwork without a status update. The next carrier may still charge detention. The next customer may still receive a late risk notice. The next transportation meeting may still turn into blame. That is the cost of fixing from too far away. A broad communication reminder will not fix a detailed handoff failure. A carrier escalation will not fix a wrong load-ready status. A dock speed lecture will not fix paperwork that is not owned. A detention dispute will not fix a driver update gap. A late pickup cannot be corrected cleanly until the leader knows where the movement actually stopped. So what does Ramon inspect? He inspects the handoff from multiple sides, not to create a giant audit, not to build a report no one uses. He inspects the movement path, appointment creation, carrier confirmation, driver arrival, gate check-in, trailer requirement, load status, staging location, pallet count, quality release, door assignment, loading start, paperwork, seal, departure scan, customer update. Then he asks where the process loses control. Does everyone define ready the same way? Does the dock board match the transportation appointment? Does the gate know what information matters? Does the driver receive status update after check-in? Does the dock know which loads are customer critical? Does shipping know when paperwork is the constraint? Does transportation know whether the load is physically ready or only system ready? Does customer service know the difference between carrier delay and facility delay? That is not overprocessing. That is logistics discipline. The most important detail may be the load-ready definition. That is often where the signal gets weak. In one function, ready means picked. In another function, ready means staged. In another function, ready means wrapped and labeled. For transportation, ready may mean available for pickup. For the dock, ready may mean assigned to a door. For shipping, ready may mean paperwork complete. For the customer, ready means the load is actually moving. If each function defines ready differently, the handoff will keep creating delay. That one word can cost money. Ready. It sounds simple. It is not always simple. A load that is picked but not staged is not ready, the same way a load that is staged, counted, released, paperwork ready, loaded, sealed, and scanned is ready. If the system does not make that distinction clear, transportation may schedule from one reality while the dock operates in another. That is where leaders need precision, not drama, precision. The next detail is the driver update point. What happens after check-in? Who tells the driver where to go? Who tells the driver the load is delayed? Who tells transportation the driver is waiting? Who owns the update when the delay changes from a normal wait into detention risk? Many dock delays worsen after the driver arrives because nobody owns the next communication. The driver is present. The system shows check-in. The dock is working. Transportation is assuming progress. But the next update has no owner. That is how a 15-minute delay turns into an hour. Then an hour turns into detention. Then detention turns into a dispute. Then the dispute becomes the conversation instead of the handoff. Another detail is paperwork. Logistics leaders know this, but it still gets underestimated. A load is not moving because freight is in a trailer. It is moving when the freight paperwork, seal, release, and departure scan all support the movement. If the bill of lading is waiting on a corrected pallet count, that is not a clerical side issue. That is movement delay. If quality has not released the final pallet, that is movement delay. If the seal is not ready, that is movement delay. If the departure scan happens late, visibility is late, and customer service is behind. Paperwork is not an afterthought. Paperwork is part of the movement. Now, what does a controlled correction sound like? It does not sound like carriers need to be better. That may be true, but it is too broad. It does not sound like the dock needs to move faster. Maybe it does, but that does not name the failure point. It does not sound like everyone needs to communicate. That is the phrase people use when they have not inspected the sequence. A controlled correction sounds more like this. We are changing the ready status, so transportation does not see a load as pickup ready until staging, pallet count, quality release, and paperwork are complete. That is specific. Or, the guard shack will capture live load priority, trailer requirement, and check-in time, and the dock lead will own the first driver update after check-in. That is specific. Or customer critical loads get a door plan before the appointment window opens, not after the driver arrives. That is specific. Or, if paperwork is the constraint, shipping owns the status update to transportation before the driver crosses the detention threshold. That is specific. Or, a carrier delay and a facility delay will not be coded the same way. We are separating accountability from friction. That is specific, and that is the difference between arguing about the miss and correcting the handoff. And let me say this directly. You do not protect the operation by hiding facility friction behind carrier blame. If the carrier missed the appointment, call it. If the driver checked in late, call it. If the trailer was wrong, call it. If the dispatcher failed to communicate, call it. But if the driver was on site, the load was not truly ready, the dock board did not match the appointment, and nobody owned the update, then the facility has to own that part of the failure. That is not weakness. That is control. A strong operation can tell the truth about where the handoff failed. A weak operation turns every miss into a debate. This is where leaders need to separate carrier failure from facility friction. Did the carrier miss the appointment, or did the driver wait because the door was not ready? Did the driver lack information, or did the guard shack not capture the right detail? Was the trailer wrong, or was the load not ready in the way the system said it was? Did transportation overbook the window, or did the dock board fail to reflect real door capacity? Did the customer get a late update because the carrier failed, or because internal status did not move fast enough? Do not protect poor carrier performance. Do not hide facility friction behind carrier blame. Separate them. That is how trust improves across the chain. Transportation can trust the warehouse signal. The dock can trust the appointment plan. Carriers can trust the facility update. Customer service can trust the reason code. Customers can trust that the business understands its own failure points. That is what operational maturity looks like. Now let's bring this back to the practical read. If you are a logistics leader, there are warning signs I would watch hard. If the load is marked ready before the floor is truly ready, transportation is being handed a weak signal. If the dock board does not match the transportation appointment, the carrier inherits confusion. If drivers wait without a clear owner, detention risk is already forming. If paperwork is treated like an afterthought, the movement will keep surprising people at the end. If every delay becomes a carrier argument, the operation may be avoiding a close-up look at facility friction. If customer service learns about the miss after the delivery window is already at risk, the handoff problem has already moved downstream. The biggest warning sign may be this: everyone is telling the truth from their own position, but the movement still fails. Transportation says the appointment was confirmed. The driver says they checked in. The dock says the load was not clear. The warehouse says the load was mostly ready. Shipping says the paperwork was waiting on account. Customer service says the customer needed an update earlier. All of those can be true. That is why the leader cannot stop at one version. The leader has to inspect the handoff where those truths were supposed to connect. That is the value of close-up analysis. It gets you close enough to see the mismatch, not to blame faster, to correct more precisely. Ramon does not need to audit every truck in the building. He needs to inspect the repeating failure point. Afternoon outbound dock handoffs for customer-critical loads. That is the pattern. That is where he puts the read. He can walk one or two examples and see where status, ownership, and movement stopped matching. Then he can correct the detail that keeps producing detention and late risk calls. Maybe the correction is a better ready status. Maybe it is appointment discipline. Maybe it is dock board alignment. Maybe it is gate check-in information. Maybe it is a staging rule. Maybe it is paperwork ownership. Maybe it is driver update timing. Maybe it is customer service notification. Maybe it is carrier accountability. The point is not to guess. The point is to inspect enough to know where the correction belongs. That is what separates movement from noise. A late truck is noise if you only argue about it. It becomes signal when you inspect where the movement stopped. So before you blame the carrier, inspect the dock handoff. Ask what looks like a carrier failure because the truck left late. Ask what may have started earlier in the appointment: staging, door assignment, paperwork, or update point. Ask whether the load was system ready or physically ready. Ask whether the driver had an update owner after check-in. Ask whether customer service learned early enough to protect the relationship. Ask whether the same handoff keeps producing the same delay. Then decide. Do not ignore carrier accountability. Do not ignore dock discipline. Do not ignore transportation planning. And do not ignore customer impact. But do not fix from too far away. The carrier matters, the driver matters, the dock matters, the paperwork matters, the customer window matters. But the dock handoff is where all of those pressures connect. If the same pickup delay keeps repeating there, do not stop at the late departure report. Look closer. Inspect the appointment. Inspect the check-in. Inspect the staging lane. Inspect the door assignment. Inspect the paperwork. Inspect the driver update. Then decide what actually needs correction. Do not blame from a distance. Use close-up analysis. Find the failure point. Move with control. Thanks for listening to the briefing.